Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 4 2021 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a good bounce-back week in regards to both my against the spread and straight-up picks. After having a losing record against the spread and another 9-win week straight up so far this week with one game to go, I am on the winning side of both my records. So against the spread and straight up this past week, I went 8-7 and 10-5 respectively. This is my first double-digit straight-up win week, so that's a very nice thing to see there. And I went above 500 in my against the spread picks for the second time through 3 weeks, so I'm okay with that. And now my overall record for the year so far for both against the spread and straight-up picks is I am 22, 24, and 1 against the spread, which equals 48%. So not great, but it's still in range to try to, over the next several weeks, get it up to that 55, 56% range, which I would take as a great win for me. And straight up now, I am 28 and 19, which equals 59.6%. So I'm definitely moving up in the right direction. I would like to get into that 67, 68% range straight up. If I can get to my usual 65, 66% on a yearly basis, I will take that. All too happy as well. And just a reminder for everybody, I am taking the Dallas Cowboys here to win tonight's game straight up, but I am taking Philadelphia +4 on the line. So I'm hedging my bet, so we'll see how the game goes. I think, with the injuries to Jordan Mailata, Rodney McLeod, they won't have Brandon Graham or Brandon Brooks either. I think the Cowboys have this win, but it is the Cowboys, and they're going in without Keanu Neal, Dominic Wilson, DeMarcus Lawrence, Michael Gallup won't be there. Amari Cooper's playing on some banged up ribs. I think this game is going to be close, and I think it's going to be about a 3-point game, which I'm hoping for to get both the cover against the spread and straight up to win. But what a crazy week 3 it was in the NFL. So many close games came down to game-winning field goals, with Lions, Ravens coming down to the NFL record 66-yard field goal by automatic kicker Justin Tucker. Shout out to Half Moon's picks, buddy. Sorry it was a tough game. That's a brutal way to lose it, but as being Detroit, I can see that you've kind of gotten used to those kind of losses over the years. Though I will say, to be an objective fan, that play should not have happened, or it should have been a 71-yard, not even try, but a Hail Mary, because we did have a delay of game penalty. You had the Atlanta Falcons getting their first win when Young Hoku made a 40-yard field goal to get the Falcons to 1-2 for the year. The Giants losing another heartbreaker. They also had a slew of injuries in that game. Darius Slayton, Blake Martinez, their big middle linebacker, is out for the year with a torn ACL. And Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard left with hamstring injury, so that is not good. And Saquon Barkley only had about another 60 yards from scrimmage. He does not look the same, and that offensive line is one of the worst in the league. And then you had Packers-Niners come down to a big kick. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo and the Niners drive down the field. They're down 6. They get the touchdown to Kyle Juszczyk on the choice route up the middle, but they gave Aaron Rodgers 37 seconds. 2 big Devontae Adams plays later. They win the game off a Mason Crosby 51-yard field goal. And the Packers have won 2 straight against 2, and they've looked like the Packers that people kind of expected throughout the year of Aaron Rodgers playing typical, brilliant Aaron Rodgers football. While Jimmy Garoppolo had his ups and downs, but definitely those 2 turnovers, the interception to Jair Alexander, and the backwards pass that he had the gall to argue with the ref about, even though everybody knew clearly that he threw a backwards lateral at the very least. It was a fumble, but at the end of the day, they just left too much time. And then you had just some other bizarre games that went on. The Dolphins-Raiders, the Raiders, the first time they're 3-0 since 2002. The last time they went to the Super Bowl. The Chargers getting a 30-24 win over Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. The Chiefs have lost back-to-back games in September for the first time ever under Mahomes. They lost back-to-back games for I think only the second or third time in Mahomes' career. And for the first time since Week 10 of 2015, the Chiefs have a losing record as a team, which is very surprising because the Chiefs have been pretty much a dominant team, or a winning team, pretty much since Andy Reid got in there in 2013. And hopefully, I just saw that Andy Reid got released from the hospital. Hopefully he'll be okay and be able to coach to go back to Philadelphia next week to play his former team that he coached so long, Philadelphia Eagles, in Philly next week. So best well wishes and hope good health to Andy. And I'll talk about the rest of the games as I go through my picks. Those are just my quick thoughts from week 4. Alright, so time to get into my picks. So this Thursday, when the 0-3 Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Cincinnati to take on the 2-1 Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Cincinnati here, minus 7.5, and Cincinnati straight up. And then on Sunday, when the 1-2 Washington football team travel to Atlanta to take on the 1-2 Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons are 1-point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta here, minus 1, and Atlanta straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-2 Houston Texans travel to Buffalo to take on the 2-1 Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, in the largest spread of the season, are 17-point favorites in this game. That is a very lofty number to take, and if it really wasn't for the Texans and maybe the Jets and the Giants, maybe, or the only other team that I would do this for would probably be the New York Jets. I would probably take the other team to cover the spread in terms of points. But I am going to take, just like I took with Denver last week at the largest spread, they were able to cover by 15. I am going to take the Buffalo Bills here, minus 17, and the Buffalo Bills straight up to win that game. Then the next game, when the 0-3 Detroit Lions travel to Chicago to take on the 1-2 Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears are 3.5-point favorites in this game. After what I saw yesterday, I am stunned that the Bears, especially with the fact that Andy Dalton may not play this game, he might be out another 1 or 2 weeks with that bone bruise. I was surprised the Bears were a 3.5-point favorite in this game after what Justin Fields and that pathetic Matt Nagy-led offense put out there yesterday. I thought the Lions would be slight favorites. But if they are not, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions plus 3.5 and the Detroit Lions straight up. That is one of the easiest picks of the whole week to get some free money, in my opinion, especially if Justin Fields starts again. But I will get into my analysis as I explain the pick. But that's why I like the Detroit there, plus 3.5 and Detroit straight up. The next game, when the 3-0 Carolina Panthers travel to Dallas to take on the 2-1 or 1-2 Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I like Dallas here to win straight up, but I am going to hedge my bet here because I think this game could be a 3 to 4 point game, and I have that extra half point. So give me the Carolina Panthers here, plus 4.5. Then the next game, when the 0-3 Indianapolis Colts travel to Miami to take on the 1-2 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites in this game. This is one of the most awkward games to pick of the whole weekend. It's a little 50-50 toss-up. I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts here as a team I think is going to win. So I'm going to take Indianapolis here plus 1.5 and the Indianapolis Colts straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Cleveland Browns travel to Minnesota to take on the 1-2 Minnesota Vikings, the Cleveland Browns are 1-point favorites in this game, giving the Cleveland Browns here minus 1 and the Cleveland Browns straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-3 New York Giants travel to New Orleans to take on the 2-1 New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Saints are 8-point favorites in this game, giving the New York Giants here plus 8, but I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-1 Tennessee Titans travel to New York to take on the 0-3 New York Jets, the Tennessee Titans are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Tennessee here minus 7.5 and Tennessee straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-2 Kansas City Chiefs travel to Philadelphia to take on the 1-2 or 2-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites in this game, giving the Kansas City Chiefs here minus 5.5 and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-0 Arizona Cardinals, in the biggest game of the weekend, travel to Los Angeles to take on the 3-0 Los Angeles Rams. The LA Rams are 6-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams straight up, but I am going to take the Arizona Cardinals plus 6. Then the next game, when the 1-2 Seattle Seahawks travel to San Francisco to take on the 2-1 San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the San Francisco 49ers here minus 3 and the San Francisco 49ers straight up. And then the next game, when the 2-1 Baltimore Ravens travel to Denver to take on the 3-0 Denver Broncos. The Baltimore Ravens are 1-point underdogs in this game. Give me the Baltimore Ravens here plus 1 and the Baltimore Ravens straight up. And then in the Sunday night game, when the 1-2 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Green Bay to take on the 2-1... I'm sorry, the next game, not the Sunday night game. The next game, when the 1-2 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the 2-1 Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here -7 and Green Bay straight up. And then in the Sunday night game, in the game that nobody ever thought would be possible to see in NFL history, when the 2-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, travels back to New England to take on Bill Belichick and the 1-2 New England Patriots. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here -6 and Tampa Bay straight up. And then finally, in the Monday night game, when the 3-0 Las Vegas Raiders travel to the 2-1 Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like the upset here. This is going to be a very close game, and this is one of those 50-50 games. It's kind of like the opposite, though, of the Colts. It's kind of like more like the Rams-Cardinals. Very good game. Whoever side picks who will have legitimate reasons to pick each side. I'm going to take the Las Vegas Raiders here +3 and the Las Vegas Raiders straight up. All right, so time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Cincinnati Bengals over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals here to win this game based on the fact that the Bengals, over the first few weeks, have played pretty good football. Joe Burrow had a 3-touchdown, 1-interception game. I thought Joe Mixon ran the ball pretty well. He had about 60 yards. The Bengals got a few fourth-quarter sacks on Big Ben Roethlisberger. They got 2 interceptions on Big Ben. And for only the second time in their last 12 games, the Bengals were able to beat Pittsburgh on the road, and it really wasn't even close. Jamar Chase is only the third rookie in NFL history to have 3 25-plus yard touchdowns in his first 3 games as a pro. So I think he is definitely my offensive rookie of the year. And I just look at the Bengals, and I see a more complete team. Maybe they'll get T. Higgins back. I don't know. It's a Sunday to Thursday turnaround, so he may not play, but that may not matter. I think Tyler Boyd's played well. I've already told you about Jamar Chase. The offensive line's held up to a good standard. I think Joe right now is playing at a much more consistent, a higher level. And I think one big difference as well is he's not turning the ball over as much. When I look at the Jaguars, every week you can see definitely there's an improvement. There are moments to where, they're getting advantages. Of course, one of the big plays of the weekend was former Lions special teamer Jamal Agnew returning a 109-yard, 68-yard attempted field goal return for a touchdown, and that actually put the Jags up by 6 as Josh Lambo missed an extra point, and he went on to, I guess they must have went for 2 because they ended up with 19 points. And the Cardinals were kind of having a tough time. The Jags were making some defensive plays. I didn't think James Conner didn't have that great of a game. Chase Edmonds was really the star that kind of helped the running game going. Though I did think Conner got 2 touchdowns, so I guess he did well in the TD department for fantasy, but not in terms of total yards. And the turning point of the game was when Trevor Lawrence threw his second interception, and it was to Byron Murphy for a pick 6. And the Arizona Cardinals from that point did not relinquish the lead. And I just see it as, I just feel like Trevor Lawrence has thrown 7 interceptions in 3 games. He's at least given 2 picks in each of his first 3 starts. And I think the Bengals with Trey Waynes, with Von Bell, with some of the other secondary guys, like Jesse Bates, they have a good enough secondary and a good enough front with Trey Hendrickson leading the way. They have Sam Hubbard, who's a decent linebacker. They have a good enough front. They will get at least, I think, 1 or 2 turnovers on Trevor Lawrence again to keep this trend going. And I just feel like, again, the Bengals have shown you through 3 weeks that even when Joe Burrow had his horrible 3-interception game 2 weeks ago, that they can fight back, and that Joe and them, this is a better team. And as weird as this is, I don't think anybody had on their card the Cincinnati Bengals being 3-1 and being tied fairly in the division through 4 weeks. Schedule plays a part of it, and some breaks play into a part of it as well. But that's how it goes. Do I think Jacksonville could win? Maybe. Yeah, I feel like, again, these are young teams. Trevor Lawrence is getting a bit better, but I just feel like, again, the Bengals have a more complete defense. They're running the ball better. And I just feel like, again, Trevor just seems so gun-ho about his throws and his risks that he's going to give the Bengals at least 1 or 2 turnovers, and giving Joe Burrow that extra opportunities will be the difference in the game. And I'm taking the Bengals -7.5 because the Jags have lost at least all their games by at least 10. So any single-digit cover should suffice as of right now. So that's why I like the Cincinnati Bengals here, -7.5, and the Cincinnati Bengals straight up. The next game, the Atlanta Falcons over the Washington Football Team. This is a game to where I know a lot of people could look at Washington and go, look, they are a better team than the New York Giants. That's fair. But I just don't trust Taylor Heineke. And honestly, I'm going to be a little subjective for a point. I'm happy that Taylor Heineke got his rear end kicked by the Bills. Because after Thursday Night Football, he went up there talking to Michael Irvin after they beat the Giants. He's like, do you think that you've earned this job for the rest of the year? He's like, yeah, I've earned it. After it took a miracle drive and Joe Judge not going for it in his own territory for you not to lose to Daniel Jones. And then what do you do the next week? You throw for about 160 yards and 2 horrible interceptions, and you get blown out by the Buffalo Bills. What was that about? Whoa, the only team that can beat us is ourselves. Well, the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen proved that they could beat you too, and they could beat your rear end pretty hard, and not even close. So, besides that, I look at this Washington team, and look, that defense hasn't been nearly as good, and I know the Falcons, their offense for the most part was not spectacular. There were points where the Giants were just dominating time possession. They had about 200 yards, while Atlanta just couldn't get out of their own way. And it is Atlanta, so how much can you trust them? It kind of goes back to the idea of where I was going to go last week with the Giants. Where, could the Washington football team win this game? Sure. But if you're going to tell me with kind of, okay running games, I like Antonio Gibson more than I do Patterson and Davis at this point. The receivers I give to Atlanta, the defense I give to Washington. I'm going to go to the quarterback, and I'm going to say that I'll trust Matt Ryan to not make as many mistakes as Taylor Heineke. I think Taylor Heineke will have some tough time against this Atlanta pass rush. Will he be able to throw decently enough against that secondary? Who knows? I think he'll have a good shot. He does have Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, not Gold, but Harmon. He's pretty good. They have Brandon Sheriff. And Heineke, showed in week 2 that he can make some, big throws. And his Atlanta defense is one of the worst in the league, especially their secondary. Especially if A.J. Terrell's out again with a concussion. But in this game, I have to take Atlanta. I think Atlanta, they played a bit of a better, game that I've seen over the last few weeks. I know week 1 was horrible, but week 2, if it wasn't for Matt Ryan's back-to-back pick sixes, they probably could have, maybe beaten the Bucs or at least been more competitive. And they played a Giant team that I don't think is that much worse than the Washington football team. And it's just the idea of, if Ryan Fitzpatrick was starting for the Washington football team, I probably would have taken them. But with Taylor Heineke showing what his kind of performance was after a, big statement win, I just have to trust Matt Ryan and the Falcons with that running game, with the lack of mistakes that they made as a team will be the difference, and Heineke gets at least 1 or 2 turnovers that gives the Falcons more opportunities to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington wins this one, but I'll take Atlanta at home against a much more weaker offense and a much more weaker, talented quarterback from Jalen Hurts and Taylor Heineke. So that's why I like Atlanta here -1 and Atlanta straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Houston Texans. This is easy because the Buffalo Bills over the last couple weeks, they've gotten to beat up on bad quarterbacks. Technically, they will have played 3 straight backups in Jacoby for a bit, or I know 2 started, but Jacoby, Taylor Heineke, and now Davis Mills. So that's all I think you have to say about this game. It's Davis Mills starting. Davis Mills had a couple interesting moments. He made a couple nice scrambles, and he did get that 1 touchdown to the back to Anthony Miller that got the Texans within 1 point, but Joey Sly, the man with one of the biggest legs in the league, but has no accuracy at all, shanked the extra point, and then after that, it was just nothing from there. They had, some offensive line injuries they had to deal with. The secondary isn't that great. They gave a lot of stuff down the middle. So I think Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders are going to have big days in the slot positions, or maybe Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox got that one great 14-yard touchdown from Josh Allen. And Josh Allen has started to play really better. That was the best game Josh Allen has played through the 3 so far. He was his most accurate, threw the most touchdowns. He also had another rushing touchdown in there. And I just have no faith in the Houston Texans. I thought Davis Mills for a little bit after that first half, maybe if they would have scored, could have pulled off the upset. And the Texans defense tried. But Sam Darnold was just too much, and his legs kind of killed him too. And that was even when Christian McCaffrey pulled his hamstring, to where the Panthers are just a much better team than Houston, and the Bills are a much better team than the Panthers. So I feel like, again, 17 points. The only other team that I would do this with right now would be the New York Jets. These two teams are the only teams that I would take a 17-point deficit spread and probably bet against it. But Houston is one of those teams, and I just feel like, again, Bills are just completely better in a lot of ways. Houston is just going with Davis Mills. The running game really hasn't been that effective. The offensive line isn't great, and it's just going to be a complete rear end kicking for the Bills' second straight home win. So that's all, like Buffalo here, minus 17, and Buffalo straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Chicago Bears. All right, this is one of the most amazing picks of the whole week. Just because if people haven't read, I will break some news. So apparently, Andy Dalton's bone bruise might have him miss the next 1 or 2 games. And if that's the case, and what we saw out of poor number 15 Justin Fields, or number 11 Justin Fields, who the Bears traded up for, by the way, that was the second lowest total amount of yards. They had 47 total yards the entire game. For the Bears itself, I get to go back to November 25th, or I guess Thanksgiving 1982, when they had 23 or 24 total yards, in terms of how inept and how pathetic that entire offense was. Especially the offensive line, which gave up 9 sacks. I think it was the second or third time in NFL history that for a rookie quarterback, or for a quarterback debuting, he got sacked 9 times. And again, is it all? It's not all Justin Fields' fault. I blame the offensive line for just being a horrible offensive line, probably behind the Giants at the second worst in the league. And Matthew Nagy, I'm actually really ashamed that he shares my name. That was a pathetic plan that you had Justin Fields. There was no creativity. They did not give Justin Fields extra protection against blitzes, and I heard this on Get Up this morning. He dropped back 20 times for 68 yards. On 13 of those plays, they just went 5 out. They didn't give him any extra protection. You had Myles Garrett going against the fossil that's left of Jason Peters. And it was one of the most ugly games I've ever seen. And I have to tell you also as well, everybody that hypes up Allen Robinson as this top 10, top 15 receiver, I don't see it. Like, he is an overpaid and overrated receiver that has 82 yards right now. And he's getting paid $18 million on the franchise tag. And he chose to go back to Chicago. So, where's the $18 million, Chicago? For all the Allen Robinson fans, where is it? Where is that $18 million receiver? Because with that kind of price, even for a year as he signed that tag, he's got to turn chicken crap into chicken salad. You can't have 28 yards. I know he had 60, but you got to do more than that. You got to prove and help your quarterback and your offensive line make plays. And Denzel Ward's a decent corner, but he shouldn't be shutting Allen Robinson down like that. So quick little side there. But that's why I have to take the Lions here, because the Lions, as weird as it is, and they're 0-3, and the Lions, and I mentioned it before, we should have maybe not had that game-winning field goal. It goes into the Lions' history of all the bad stuff that happened through their franchise and existence. But you have to look at that Lions team and go, that's not an 0-3 football team that's been out there. True, they got blown out in one half, but besides that, well, I guess they got blown out in 4 of the 12 quarters, okay? In the 8 other quarters they played football, they haven't looked like a bad team. 8-point loss to San Francisco, 25 yards from getting to a 2-point conversion tie. They were up 17-14 on the Packers for the first half of Green Bay, and they came back from 13-0 against us yesterday. So, I look at this Lions team and I'm just like, this is clearly the better football team. Like, could the Bears defense shut down DeAndre and Jamal Williams? Sure. Could they, limit TJ Hawkinson? Sure. But is Justin Fields going to be able to move the ball? I saw how bad Lamar was. Lamar barely completed over 50% of his passes, threw a horrible interception, and when he tried to move, the Detroit defenders were able to get him around and contain him. And that was Lamar Jackson. Justin Fields is entering his second start coming from a bludgeoning. And even if Andy Dalton can play, I'm like, I'll take the Lions because I just feel like Jared Goff can outplay. And with the Lions offense with Anthony Lynn, they'll have more creativity and they'll have some more stops where I just can't trust Matt Nagy and Fields, or Matt Nagy and Dalton, or Matt Nagy and Foles, depending on what happens in this game. Like, could the Bears win? Sure. But I don't think, if Justin Fields is starting again, nobody, unless you're a diehard Bears fan or the ultimate Lions hater, can look at that game and go, I'm going to take the Bears to win this game in any way. Seriously. Like, it's a meaningless game, I think, for both teams. I don't think both these teams will move forward. But this game right here is one of the easiest picks of the weekend from what I saw. Do I think Justin Fields is that bad? No. But I am just going to say, he is from Ohio State, so how much better can he get? He can get better, but how much better? He went to Ohio State, so I'll just leave that out there. Maybe not a lot. But I am going to take the Detroit Lions here just because I feel like I can't watch that performance, and I've seen the Lions through the first 3 weeks, and I kind of evaluated everything. There is no way if Fields is starting, that Lions team should lose. If they play that same way. They're going to play differently, but if he can't improve or he just doesn't feel that comfortable, especially against a decent Lions pass rush without Jamie Collins, the Lions should win. So that's why I like the Detroit Lions here, plus 3.5, and Detroit Lions straight up. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Carolina Panthers. This game, I took the Dallas Cowboys for one main reason. Christian McCaffrey's injury. That's it. Christian McCaffrey had a big hamstring injury that made him leave around the middle of the second quarter in Thursday's game, and he wasn't able to come back. And Matt Rule said he's going to be out for a few weeks. So that means that fifth rounder Chuba Hubbard is now the number one back for the Carolina Panthers. And I thought he was decent at Oklahoma State. I thought he was a great compliment to Christian. I didn't think he was as good as Christian. But it's going to be his opportunity to be the number one running back. And they lost their number 9 overall pick, J.C. Horn, to a broken foot with multiple bones broken in his foot. So that's why they just earlier today the Carolina Panthers and Jacksonville Jaguars traded. Let's see, I got this right. The Carolina Panthers traded away a third-round pick and tight end Dan Arnold, who was going to replace James O'Shaughnessy. He's going to replace James due to injured reserve at tight end. And C.J. Henderson, the former Florida cornerback, is going out to Carolina to replace J.C. Horn for the rest of the year. And now they have J.C. Horn and C.J. Henderson on 2 young deals. They're definitely some of the more expensive corners. Or they definitely have a young nucleus to help continue to build around that young nucleus. But I just think it's the Christian McCaffrey injury. I like Zeke and Pollard in this matchup. I think the Cowboys, they should be able to get Keanu Neal back. They should be able to get some other defenders. They're coming in. Michael Gallup can come back from injured reserve. So hopefully he can come back and help add to this receiving core. And I just trust Dak over Darnold here. The Carolina Panthers are in a weird spot to where their win over New Orleans looks pretty good today, especially how they did it. But I just don't know if you can trust them at 3-0. They're very much like Denver in that way, even though Carolina has more to stand on than Denver does. But it's very much that way of like, if they beat the Dallas Cowboys and get to 4-0, then they're a legitimate team that not only could make the playoffs, you could argue, especially with how Tampa's done, especially with how they can't run the ball, that Carolina could compete for that division. Especially, with that defensive front, because that defensive front's one of the best in the league. Brian, they didn't have Yetur Gross-Matos out there. They have Derek Brown. They have Hassan Reddick, who's been a beast. He's been leading the league in sacks. And I really respect this Panthers team. Also, DJ Moore getting 120 yards and 8 receptions. He's done a good job. He and Robbie Anderson are a good receiving pair duo. But I have to take Dallas because they're at home, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively enough with Chuba. And I don't think Chuba's that good of a receiving threat that Darnold's going to have a lot of tough time. And that Panthers offensive line is not great. He had got stripped twice by the Houston defense, Dallas' defense, with the guys they have. I know they won't have DeMarcus Lawrence, but they'll have Randy Gregory back. They'll be able to generate some good enough pressure there. And I think Dak makes fewer mistakes than Darnold in this very intriguing game coming up this Sunday in Dallas with Carolina. I'm going to take Carolina plus 4.5 because, again, I think it's going to be a 3 or 4 point game. Darnold's got a lot of talent. Darnold's got a lot of confidence. And this Panther team is going to be motivated to show a, well-respected team in Dallas that they are here and that they can win. But at the end of the day, no McCaffrey. That's going to be too big of an impact to not give the Cowboys the win, in my opinion. So that's why I like Dallas here to win straight up, but the Carolina Panthers plus 4.5. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts or the Miami Dolphins. Look, there is not a lot to say here in terms of my confidence or with this pick, the only thing I can say about this game is that I know I might sound nuts and I might regret it because I'm going to take Carson Wentz to outplay Jacoby Brissett. Or I'll put it this way. Jacoby Brissett will make one more mistake than Carson Wentz. That's it. Because both defenses, Dolphins defense had a great, little bit. They were up 14-0. They got the Landon Roberts 80-plus yard pick six from Derek Carr. And then you had Malcolm Brown running wide open in the end zone. But the game for the Dolphins just came downhill. When Jacoby is in the end zone. If anybody saw this, please tell me what your reaction was. Jacoby Brissett is in the end zone with Jalen Waddle. They're at the back of the end zone, and Brian Flores, as offensive coordinator, decides to go, oh yeah, let's throw a screen in the end zone. He throws it to Jalen Waddle. It gets complete, and they get the safety. And then the next drive, they get a field goal to make it 5-14, and then the Raiders got a touchdown to make it within 2. And I'm like, okay, the Raiders are going to win this game. Because as soon as it got within 3 points, the Raiders were just the better team. And the Dolphins, they really couldn't generate that much offensively after that. Like, they kind of kept in it, but it was an 8-point game, and it just felt like that Jacoby made one nice drive to get to the bottom and a 2-point conversion. Then they traded field goals, but then I don't know if it was Byron Jones, but B. Jones, I was looking at the bottom of the ticker. He got hurt, so that's going to be a big injury for the Dolphins to deal with as well. But it was just one of those interesting games to where, like, I was not really impressed with Dolphins and Jacoby. Jacoby had some nice scrambles, and he did have the one the 2-point conversion to Will Fuller, who had a decent game in his first game as a Dolphin. But I'm just going to take Carson to outplay him. I will probably regret this pick. Also, it was with the points. So I was like, these two teams are about evenly matched. Quinn Nelson, he went down with a high ankle sprain. The Colts were able to get 3 turnovers. They won the turnover battle by 3, and they still lost. Carson's only completed 58% of his passes. They really missed T.Y. Hilton because nobody else really could get the ball moving down the field for the Colts except their running backs, Nico Hines and Jonathan Taylor. But yeah, I guess that's my only reason for picking the Colts. I'm not going to be surprised at all if I pick the Dolphins, and probably after this video I'll be thinking throughout the week I probably should have picked the Dolphins. But I'm going to take the Colts here just because I think Carson outplays Jacoby. And that's going to be the difference. Carson could cost the Colts the game. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. But I'm going to take Carson to beat Jacoby in a game with two kind of even teams. Receiving cores are decent. Defenses are pretty solid. Offensive lines, the Colts have a little bit of a better one on, reputation. Kicking games, Blankenship and Sanders. Sanders is better, but Blankenship's a pretty solid kicker. And the coaching, Flores and Reich, two kind of, okay coaches. Whoever loses this one will have the more pressure on them moving forward, because both of them probably should get fired at the end of this year. Frank probably won't because he just signed a 5-year extension, but still. I'm going to take the Colts here. I have the 1.5 to give, and I just think Carson will outplay Jacoby. Carson could screw me and, play worse than Jacoby. But I'm going to hope for the latter and just go with the Colts on that one. So that's all I get Indianapolis here, plus 1.5, and the Indianapolis Colts straight up. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the Minnesota Vikings. This is one to where the Minnesota Vikings are a very underrated team. They are 1-3, but they are 2 kicks away from being 3-0. And Kirk Cousins, as weird as this is, he'd be my number 2 MVP candidate. He has played great football, no turnovers, another 3 touchdowns, threw for 311 yards. Alexander Madison with a 120-yard game without Dalvin Cook having to be there. That was really impressive. And I like Madison. He usually gets about 5 yards per carry. So he's a good running back and a good complement to Dalvin Cook moving forward. And I think that Madison should be getting more opportunities just to give Dalvin Cook's legs, a bit of a respite at times. But the reason why I'm going with the Cleveland Browns is the Cleveland Browns have a better defense. The Vikings were playing the Seahawks defense. And I said to everybody last week, I wouldn't have been surprised at all if the Vikings would have won because I just could not trust that Seattle defense. I just thought Russ and the offense would have showed up and they would have outshot Kirk Cousins. Well, I knew the game was over when the Vikings took the lead after a bad pass interference penalty that put the Vikings up by 4 to go into the half. They had the ball to start the second half, and that was over at that point. But I think Cleveland's defense, they have better corners, they have better safeties, they have a better scheme, And I just feel like they'll limit the Vikings offense in a much better way compared to how the Seahawks did. And also, I think, again, the Browns, they'll be able to run the ball a bit more effectively. I think this is going to be a big game for Odell Beckham, hopefully for Browns fans, he starts getting it going again, because that contract has not looked great due to injuries and just lack of production. And he and Baker just seem like not to have that much of a great chemistry either, so I think that's a key to it as well. But I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns here because I trust their defense, and I trust that to hold the Vikings a little bit more. And with the running game, with how Austin Hooper, Bryant, Anthony Schwartz, Kareem, and Nick Chubb. Kareem had 80 yards and a rushing touchdown. I thought he had his best game of the year and one of the best games he had as a pro in a long time. I think that running game matches out with Cook, and I'm going to take the Browns defense to give one more stop compared to the Vikings. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings won this one at all, but I feel like, again, the Browns have a much better defense, and I feel like the Browns offense should be able to go against the Vikings defense, who's given up 27, 34, and 17, and put up enough points to win this game in a high-scoring affair. So that's why I like the Cleveland Browns here, -1, and the Cleveland Browns straight up. The next game, the New Orleans Saints over the New York Giants. This one is fairly easy. The Saints, they just did an absolute beating on the New England Patriots. They got three interceptions from Mac Jones. The Pats have lost 2 home games for the first time, I think, since Belichick's got there. It's like only the second time he's lost the first 2 home games of a season. I thought Jameis played okay, and it's very weird watching Jameis. Jameis is a guy that he has all the tangible and intangible of being one of the top 5 overall passing leaders. I know he threw for 5,000 yards a couple years ago, but he just has all that in him. But the data shows that he doesn't win that many games that way. He is the gunslinger tangible, but needs the game manager intangible to win games. Because it's weird. Because, the Saints ran for about 140 yards. That's what they really killed the Pats. Was Alvin Kamara running for about 80 and Taysom Hill getting a big 30 yards himself and a touchdown. But Jameis only threw for about 2 touchdowns and 120 yards. A good game from Jameis, no turnovers, and they win by 15. And the game really wasn't even close. Well, I guess it technically was, but then when Mac Jones threw that pick 6, I knew the game was over. And I just think, again, the Saints are hopefully going to be able to go back into the Superdome after what happened with Hurricane Ida. I think that will be very exciting for Saints fans to see their team back in their back in their true home at the new Caesars Superdome. And I just look at the Giants and I go, I just can't do it. Like, the Falcons are not that much better than the Giants, but I know the Saints are. And I just think it's just that easy. The Saints will shut down the running game. Damian Harris only had about 16 yards on the ground, and Saquon's already only rushing for about 44 per game anyway. But, yeah, I have to take the Saints here just because, again, they have a more complete team, much more dominating defense. Marshawn Lattimore is back, and I just can't trust Daniel Jones to be able to move the ball that well against this Saints defense. And I think Jameis, he even can have mistakes in this game because I expect Daniel Jones to have a turnover himself. And I just feel like, again, Jameis will make a few more plays at home with the talent he has compared to what the Giants have overall with the bad offensive line and a very undisciplined defense and special teams. I'm going to take the Giants here +8 because I just don't know how Jameis is going to do. And the Giants have been able to cover for the most part. They've been able to cover a lot of, the games. In his tenure, they're in a lot of one-score games, so that one-score range to me seems appropriate. And I just feel like, again, like, if the Giants defense can get a couple mistakes on Jameis, that'll be big. But also, I do want to see what the impact of not having Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton out there next week, if that happens, could be. So, that's like the New Orleans Saints here to win straight up with the New York Giants +8. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the New York Jets. This is the easiest pick of the weekend. The New York Jets are horrible. They are the worst team in the NFL, by far. Their defense is garbage. Their offense, Zach Wilson, looks like the worst quarterback, and he looks worse than Sam Darnold did even as a rookie. They scored no points. They can't run the football. I mean, basically, everything the Jets have going, like every good thing the Jets have, you really can't name a good thing the Jets have. maybe Corey Davis and maybe C.J. Mosley, but he looks overrated and overpaid. Maybe not overrated, overpaid by what the Jets have given him and how bad that defense was. They can't stop the run, and they're playing the best running back in football, Derrick Henry, so that's great. And it just like the Jets have scored a grand total, I believe, of 20 points through 3 games. So that's a little under 7 points per game. That's the weakest offense in the entire league. And the Titans defense, look, the Titans defense is not great. They gave up 38 to Arizona. They gave up 30 to Seattle. And even, in the Colts game, they had their moments. But that was just the Colts. They could have put up more points, but Ryan Tannehill threw 2 interceptions and there was a fumble, which the Colts recovered. This game is just too lopsided for me. I can't believe it was 7.5. I thought, if Denver was given 10, I thought that, Tennessee might have been given 13 to 14 to play this Jets team. To me, in any survivor pools, take the Titans or the Saints in your as your locks for this week, because I just feel confident against these 2 New York teams, how they're going. It's going to feel pretty good. Probably go against either one of those teams for the rest of the year, depending on who they're playing. I think the Jets have no shot. Like, the Jets just look dreadful, and it's just like it's an amazing thing looking at Sam Darnold and how effective he's been in Carolina. Look how rejuvenated he looks, and look how polished he looks, compared to Zach Wilson, who looks worse than he does, and is giving the Jets. I think it's one of those weird things. If he keeps playing this bad, if Salah and LaFleur and their defense coordinator, I don't know who that is, if they all go there, you might want to take another quarterback with the pick you have. I know that sounds weird, but it's just a fair point. So that's why Tennessee are minus 7.5 and Tennessee straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs here based on the fact that unlike the Ravens, the Browns, and the Chargers, the Eagles don't nearly have as good an offense. They don't nearly have the offensive weapons that those other 3 teams have. They don't have the quarterback that those other 3 teams have at their 1 and 2 start. And I just feel like, again, the Chiefs are motivated. They want to show everybody that this Chiefs team is still a good football team. I don't think right now, after 3 weeks, you can't call them the number 1 Super Bowl contender and the Super Bowl winner. But they will show, I think, against the Eagles, who may not have their left tackle. They want to Brandon Graham. They want to Brandon Brooks. And we don't know how they're going to do tonight, obviously. I just feel like, again, the Chiefs, they're going to have one of the easier offenses to worry about. And I think Mahomes cleans up on the turnovers. I wish he wasn't as careless as he was with some of the behind-the-look passes and the overthrows. But I feel like the Chiefs as well, when Andy went there last time, they won by about 8 points, I think. So 5.5 is too easy not to have that here to give the Chiefs back to 500 and kind of back in the steady place moving forward among the AFC. Sounds like the Kansas City Chiefs here minus 5.5 and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Arizona Cardinals. I am taking the Los Angeles Rams here because they had the most impressive win of the entire NFL weekend, beating the Buccaneers 34-24 in a pretty much decisive game. Matt Stafford had the best game of his career. He threw for 4 touchdowns, 340 yards. Deshaun Jackson broke the record for the most 75-plus yard touchdown receptions. He had 3 receptions for under 120 yards. Cooper Kupp had 2 more touchdowns along with 96 receiving yards. Sony will show you put it in a nice, good 60 yards himself. And I also want to congratulate Aaron Donald for his first ever career sack against Tom Brady. And I just look at the Rams. I feel like, again, they are more complete. They are more aggressive. And I just feel like, again, Matt Stafford should be able to outplay Kyler Murray. I feel like with the Cardinals, look, they've done their job, and their defense looks better. They look more impressive. However, I look at the Cardinals and say they have an offense, especially if DeAndre can get healthy, that they can compete with the Rams basically score for score, and that's what I kind of feel like. I feel like with the Cardinals, with DeAndre, with Jalen, I think Jalen also might have an advantage due to DeAndre's injury with his ribs. I can't trust the Cardinals' running game either. James Conner and Edmonds really haven't done a lot. So that's why I can't take the Cardinals to win. But I feel like with the Cardinals, with that defense, getting after Stafford, with Chandler and JJ at the bookends, they have Isaiah Simmons in the middle of the field as a middle linebacker. They have Golden. They have Budda Baker. They have Byron Murphy, who's a decent corner who got the pick 6. This Cardinal team has a good enough defense to hopefully get a stop or 2 against the Rams offense. But I just feel like, again, in this kind of game, you go with the more complete team, the more consistent team. And the Cardinals, as great as they've been, they should be a 2-1 football team if it wasn't for Greg Joseph's 37-yard field goal. And I just think the Rams are in a much more advantageous position compared to the Cardinals. Also, it's a home game, so that kind of played into it too. Would the Cardinals win? Would that surprise me? No, not really. I think the Cardinals, they have done a good job too. And I feel like the Cardinals can compete with this Rams team. But at the end of the day, I'll take the better defense, the more, consistent quarterback in Stafford. And I'll just take the whole complete Rams picture compared to the Cardinals, which has a little bit of a, glare in some places. So that's like the LA Rams here to win straight up. The Arizona Cardinals +6. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the Seattle Seahawks. This is one to where this is not about Russell and Jimmy or Russell and Trey or Russell and both of them. This is about the Seattle Seahawks defense being absolutely bad. The offensive line isn't great also as well. So, with Nick Bosa and that pass rush, they're having a tough time against the Packers. They won't nearly have as tough time against the Seattle offensive line. And I just feel like, again, San Francisco will be able to move the ball at a much better and consistent rate compared to Seattle's. I know the secondary, Seattle might have a better secondary because the Niners secondary is just banged up with injuries all across the board. Also, best wishes to Josh Norman with a lung injury with some blood in his lungs. Hopefully he'll be okay and be able to come out and practice and play in this big game. Because I feel like, again, for San Francisco, they're okay. But I feel like for Seattle, if they drop to 1-3, it is panic. And we are now teetering on playoff level. And if they lose that one, I'd probably say the Seattle Seahawks, even with Russell Wilson, with all he can do as a quarterback, with all the talent he has offensively, with some of the big names he has defensively, and Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, this is not a good enough team to make the playoffs. If they beat San Francisco and they get the tiebreaker and it's 2-2 against 4-0, and then they play the Rams next Thursday to start the Thursday night schedule again, I think the Seahawks are going to be back into contention or back into a good spot. But I just don't see that happening. I think the Niners are going to be able to run the ball better. If Alexander Mattison can have 120 yards, if Jermichael can play, Trey's already been cleared out of concussion protocol. And I forget the other back that they had, Elijah Mitchell. And if his shoulder, if that stinger can, kind of wring itself out, I think the Niners will be able to run the ball a lot more effectively. They'll be able to use play action. I don't think I have any answer for Debo or Kittle. And I just trust the Niners defense to hold Seattle to a couple more stops compared to them the other way around. Should be a great game. It's an NFC West rivalry. Always these Seattle-San Francisco games always come close, always come down to some weird, wacky finish. But I'm going to take the home team here. I trust the coaching staff more as an all-around build aspect, and they have a much better defense compared to Seattle's, which I'm just not sold on right now. So that's why I like San Francisco -3 here and San Francisco straight up. Then the next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Denver Broncos. I'm taking Baltimore here +1 because I think Lamar is better than Teddy Bridgewater. And as I said earlier, wide receiver KJ Hamler, their number 3 wide receiver, is out for the year with a torn ACL. Jerry Jeudy is out as well for another for this week. This was their second game. He has to miss 3 games, so this will be the third and final game of his mandatory IR stint. So that's huge. So I feel like if Marlon Humphrey can contain Cortland Sutton at the corner or corner receiver battle, which I think he will, the Broncos will just have Noah Fant to throw to and nobody else really of significance. Maybe Deontay Johnson, they use a special teamer. And I just feel like, again, Lamar, this is one of those weird rep ideas to where I feel like for the Chiefs and the Ravens, we were, like to use the basketball analogy, if the Chiefs were like the 80s Celtics, the Ravens were the bad boys. Now we come to this game, the bad boys have, kind of been going on top, and here come the Jordan Bulls and the Broncos, trying to prove themselves against the best team to show that they're here and they're, a legitimate team to be dealing with and thinking about as the season goes on. But I'd be surprised if Denver won this game. Not at all, because I feel like Denver is one of the more complete, solid, and consistent teams in the entire league. But I'm going to take Lamar in our defense, especially if we get Justin Houston, Jalen Ferguson, Mahmoud Bank better, or Justin Mahmoud Bank better back, and I forget the other defender that we didn't have. But if we get all those guys back, and we get Ronnie Stanley back, that'll be big. And I just feel like, again, the Ravens with Lamar. Lamar makes a few more plays than Teddy Bridgewater does, and he doesn't make as many mistakes. That gives the Broncos more opportunities, and that's how the Ravens win this game. Should be a great game, and I hope Denver puts up a good fight because we need this win. Because like somebody just texted me earlier, we could be an 0-4 football team. I will admit that to anybody just right now. That's fair. So that's why I like Baltimore here +1 and Baltimore straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm taking the Green Bay Packers here because the Pittsburgh Steelers look horrible offensively. The offensive line is horrible. The offensive line is horrible. The Big Ben looks like a shot fighter. He threw it 58 times for only 300 yards, but they had 2 big turnovers from Ben, 2 interceptions. They really couldn't run the ball. Najee Harris tied Saquon Barkley and Roy Halou with 10 receptions, the most for a rookie in a single game in NFL history. So kudos to Najee there, but they lost Juju Smith-Schuster to a rib injury. TJ Watt didn't play. They really couldn't get any pass rush. The secondary looked beat. Besides Minka, Terrell Edmonds, Hayden, all those guys, they just look old or just not nearly good enough to be in the league as a starting free safety or corner at this point. And I just feel like with the Packers, that like the Packers have all the momentum. They're coming back to Green Bay. Pittsburgh's going into a cold environment. That's not going to rattle them, but just kind of the environment of the fans going against what you've done the last couple weeks against the Raiders and the Bengals, respectively. I feel like the Packers are just way too more complete and dynamic of an offense to go into with a less than 100% Big Ben that doesn't look as talented or motivated to play anymore. And I think the Packers just roll over this one into a big Lambeau leap in 3-1 and take a commanding lead of their division, the NFC North. So that's why I like Green Bay here -7, Green Bay straight up. And in the final 2 games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the New England Patriots, it's Tom Brady's return. That's all we have to say. Tom Brady does not lose very often back-to-back games, and he hasn't lost that many back-to-back games against in Tampa. They should be able to get Antonio Brown back. JPP might be able to come back. And just after watching what I saw from the patch from Mac Jones, I feel like he's going to have a brutal day against that Tampa Bay defense. He'll have 1 or 2 turnovers that really will limit the movement of the ball for the Bucs. Their run defense is great, so I don't expect Damian Harris or Stevenson, the Oklahoma running back, to have any sort of big impact in the running game. They lost James White to a hip injury. Hopefully he gets healthy soon. And I just feel like with the Bucs, like they're going to take it out on the Patriots. Like that was not the best the Bucs could play the whole year. I feel like, again, the motivation for them. Bill's not going to say anything about the whole New England storyline. That's what for all of us people that watch the game, put out videos and content. That's for us to discuss, not him. But I feel like, again, Tampa, much more complete team, more motivated. Also for AB too. He gets to go up against Robert Kraft before he came to Tampa. So I think this will be a little bit of revenge for Antonio Brown as well. And I can't trust Mac Jones in that spot. I don't think Mac Jones is as bad as his 3 interception performance, but he's nowhere near going to be able to compete against Brady unless Brady throws 4 interceptions, which I don't see that happening. So that's like Tampa Bay here -6 and Tampa Bay straight up. And finally, the Las Vegas Raiders over the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a game to where I know probably in my head the Chargers are better at quarterback, they're better at talent, they have more secondary. And the Raiders, they have an improved pass rush, but nothing phenomenal. But the biggest reason why I'm taking the Raiders to beat the Chargers is that the Raiders in their last 4 meetings have won 3 of them. And they've all been in close games. So both these teams have, over the first few weeks have shown that they can be in close competitive games. And for the Raiders win those outcomes, on the Chargers lose at least one of those. And move forward from there. And I just think, again, the Raiders' offensive line should be able to hold up okay. Losing Richie Incognito to a calf injury is not great. But I just feel like, again, Joey Bosa's playing on 1 foot. He was dominant. He was able to get a good amount of pressure. But I just feel like, again, if you're going to give me Derek Carr and this Raiders feeling compared to the Chargers may be the better overall team, but I feel like the Raiders, they have a lot more confidence and momentum due to their 3-game winning streak. And also having that motivation of Derek Carr playing at a very good level. And I think he outplays Herbert in this type of game to where Herbert makes a bad interception like he did in the Dallas game, and it gives the Raiders an opportunity to win off a game-winning field goal. And I hedged too because it was hard for me to decide, but I hedged just because I thought I didn't hedge. I'm going to take the Raiders just because I feel like with the Raiders, this is their year, and the Chargers, last time they were home, they had this kind of choking moment. I kind of feel like with the Raiders, it's going to feel kind of the same way. The Raiders are going to be able to get an opportunity to score at the end or get a game-changing touchdown or field goal that puts the game back into play or out of the play. that I can't see the Chargers being able to compete with. So that's why I like the Las Vegas Raiders here, +3, and the Las Vegas Raiders straight up. And that is it. So until next week, good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fellow prognosticators, and fantasy football players. And please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page. There's a lot of great prognosticators like Bridgewater's Finest, Andrew Warren, Big Pat Sports Talk, Gio Knows, Christopher Carter, Johnny Gretfy, Keith Bailey, all those guys and gals that make predictions like I do every single week. Please check out their YouTube channels and their predictions to see if you agree with their analysis or disagree. Just have a fun, constructive football conversation about all topics NFL. So until next week, this is Matthew the Fanatic signing off. Until next time, so long.